question never gets asked directly. In polite conversation, at dinner parties, among co-workers, nobody turns to the single woman and inquires how she's managing the absence of physical intimacy. The topic is walled off by social convention. We discuss her career, her travels, her personal growth journey. The biological reality underlying all of it remains unmentioned, as if acknowledging it would be crude rather than merely honest. But the reality exists regardless of social avoidance. Human beings are sexual creatures. The drive doesn't disappear because circumstances make its satisfaction complicated. The woman without a partner doesn't become asexual. She becomes a sexual person navigating the absence of the typical outlet for that sexuality. What happens in that navigation rarely gets examined. The assumption seems to be that she simply waits, patiently, contentedly, until the right person arrives. The waiting is presented as neutral, just a pause, a holding pattern, a temporary condition that produces no particular challenge. This assumption is wrong. The waiting isn't neutral. The absence produces effects, psychological, emotional, sometimes physical. And women develop strategies for managing those effects. Strategies that vary dramatically based on temperament, values, circumstances, and what they're willing to accept. Today, we're examining territory that usually stays hidden. How women actually handle sexuality when no partner exists to handle it with. Not the sanitized version. Not the ideological version that pretends the question doesn't matter. The actual range of responses that women deploy when biological reality collides with circumstantial absence. This matters for men because understanding it provides insight into women you might encounter. The woman who's been single for years has been doing something during those years. Knowing the range of somethings that exist helps you understand who you're actually dealing with when you're dealing with her. The biological foundation requires acknowledgement. Sexual drive isn't optional equipment. It's built into the operating system. Evolution installed it because reproduction required it. The species that didn't want to mate didn't reproduce. The species that did want to mate, intensely, persistently throughout reproductive years, those are the species that continued existing. Women inherited this drive alongside men. The cultural narrative sometimes suggests otherwise, that women could take or leave sexuality, that it's men who are driven while women are receptive. This narrative serves social purposes but doesn't match biological reality. Women experience sexual desire. The desire produces tension when unfulfilled. The tension demands some form of response. The response isn't purely physical. Sexuality connects to emotional well-being, to self-concept, to hormonal balance, to how a woman feels about herself and her life. The absence of sexual expression doesn't create a single specific problem. It creates a constellation of effects that manifest differently depending on the individual. Hormonal effects are measurable. Sexual activity triggers oxytocin, dopamine, endorphins, chemicals that regulate mood, connection, and stress response. The absence of these chemical releases produces different baseline states. The woman experiencing regular intimacy operates with different neurochemistry than the woman who hasn't been touched in years. This isn't argument for any particular response. It's acknowledgement that the question matters. The woman without a partner isn't facing a trivial inconvenience. She's managing a genuine biological situation that affects her in real ways. What she does about it reveals something about her. Why some women find themselves partnerless deserves examination. Multiple pathways lead to long-term singleness. Understanding these pathways helps interpret the strategies that emerge from them. Some women operate from transactional framing. Intimacy must be earned. The man must demonstrate worthiness through effort, provision, courtship rituals. She's not giving anything until receiving what she believes she deserves first. This mindset produces extended singleness because the transaction's rarely complete. The requirements escalate. The bar rises as men clear previous bars. She's perpetually unsatisfied with what's offered because satisfaction would mean surrendering leverage she values more than connection. The man who might provide genuine partnership exits the negotiation. The dynamic feels extractive rather than collaborative. He's unwilling to audition indefinitely for a role where he's perpetually evaluated rather than accepted. She remains single not because men aren't available, but because her framing repels the men who approach. Psychological trauma creates different pathways to singleness. Past violation installs fear that prevents new connection. The woman who experienced assault carries that experience into every subsequent interaction. Her body remembers danger even when her mind acknowledges that this particular man isn't dangerous. The nervous system that learned to associate physical intimacy with harm doesn't unlearn easily. Father relationships shape attachment in ways that extend decades. The woman whose father was absent, abusive, or unreliable often develops protective patterns that prevent intimacy. She's learned that men cause pain. She's learned to keep distance that prevents the pain she expects. Breakups compound the protective impulses. The woman who gave herself fully and got destroyed doesn't give herself fully again. She holds back. The holding back prevents the depth of connection that would produce the partnership she simultaneously wants and fears. The trauma-based singleness is tragic rather than strategic. She doesn't want to be alone, she wants connection. But her system won't permit it. The wanting and the preventing coexist, producing extended periods without partnership while she wants partnership. Unrealistic standards produce singleness through different mechanisms. She's waiting for someone who doesn't exist. The man with the status, the income, the appearance, the personality, the emotional availability, the lifestyle, all at levels she requires. This man is either vanishingly rare or selecting from options that don't include her. The standards often correlate with her own peak desirability. When she was 23 and stunning, high-caliber men were available. The memory of what she could attract then shapes what she demands now. But now is different. The market she's shopping in has changed. The standards that were realistic then are fantasy now. Rejection of available options continues indefinitely. He's not tall enough, he's not successful enough, he's not exciting enough. Each candidate gets eliminated for failing to match an ideal that actual humans can't embody. She remains single while insisting that the problem is the quality of men rather than the quality of her evaluation criteria. Aging intersects with standards in painful ways. The woman over 40 faces dating realities that differ from what she experienced at 25. The men she wants often want younger women. The men who want her aren't the men she imagined wanting. The pool has shifted in ways that her expectations haven't accommodated. Self-perception lags behind market feedback. She sees herself as she was rather than as she's become. She expects responses appropriate to earlier versions of herself. The mismatch between self-concept and external response produces confusion, frustration, and continued singleness. Some women at this stage adjust. They recalibrate expectations to match reality. They find partnership with men who want them as they currently exist rather than as they used to be. The adjustment isn't defeat. It's recognition that markets change and participation requires adapting to them. Others don't adjust. They insist on standards that produce nothing. They age into deeper singleness while maintaining that the standards are correct and the market is wrong. The insistence provides psychological protection at the cost of actual partnership. Sometimes singleness reflects genuine priority allocation. Not every woman without a partner is dysfunctional. Some have actively chosen to focus elsewhere. Career demands during building years, health issues requiring attention, recovery from divorce that needs completion before new partnership makes sense. The woman who's consciously postponed relationship has different relationship to her singleness than the woman who wants partnership but can't achieve it. The postponement is strategic rather than failed strategy. The management of sexuality during postponement reflects choice rather than desperation. This category deserves distinction from the others. The woman who could have partnership but has deferred it operates differently from the woman who can't have partnership despite wanting it. The strategies they deploy might overlap, but the psychological landscape differs entirely. The effects of prolonged absence accumulate. Emotional changes appear gradually. The woman without touch becomes touchier. Irritability increases. Patience decreases. The baseline mood that regular intimacy would stabilize becomes unstable. She's not necessarily aware of the connection. The moodiness seems environmental rather than sexual, but the correlation exists. The neurochemistry piece matters here. Regular intimacy releases chemicals that regulate stress response. Without those releases, stress accumulates differently. The woman might develop anxiety, depression, or emotional volatility that she attributes to other causes. The actual cause, absence of the chemical releases that sexuality provides, often goes unexamined. Physical effects are more controversial to discuss. Some research suggests pelvic health connections. circulation, muscular function, hormonal regulation. The claims vary in credibility. What seems clear is that the reproductive system evolved for use. Extended non-use might produce effects, though isolating those effects from other variables proves difficult. Self-esteem effects are most visible. The woman who hasn't been desired in years starts wondering if she's desirable. The wondering becomes doubting. The doubting becomes believing she's not. The belief affects how she carries herself, which affects how others respond to her, which confirms the belief. The cycle is vicious. Social comparison intensifies the self-esteem damage. Her peers have partners. Her peers are chosen. She watches their lives, the weddings, the families, the evident desiredness, while experiencing unchosenness. The comparison converts private struggle into public inadequacy. The management strategies deserve detailed examination. Women without partners deploy different approaches to the biological reality they're managing. The approaches reveal values, psychology, and what they're willing to accept about themselves. Strategy 1. The casual arrangement. Some women separate physical need from relationship need. They find men willing to provide physical satisfaction without the entanglement of partnership. The arrangement is explicitly limited. Neither party expects more than what's offered. The men in these arrangements occupy different positions. Sometimes single men who also want connection without commitment. Sometimes married men who can't offer commitment. Sometimes men whose circumstances preclude relationship but permit physical connection. The woman choosing this route has decided that her body's needs matter enough to address directly. The need for physical intimacy gets satisfied. The need for partnership remains unmet but is treated as a separate problem. The solution to one doesn't require solving the other. The psychology varies. Some women compartmentalize successfully. The arrangement provides what it provides without bleeding into other areas. Others struggle with the compartmentalization. Emotions develop despite explicit agreements, producing suffering the arrangement was supposed to prevent. The arrangement often gets hidden. The woman who's been casually satisfying physical needs for years might not disclose this history to subsequent serious partners. The disclosure seems risky. Judgment might follow. So the history gets buried. The new partner receives sanitized version that omits years of actual behavior. Strategy 2. Self-satisfaction. The most private strategy, masturbation, serves as the primary outlet for many women managing long-term absence. The solution requires no other person. The need gets addressed without the complications that other people introduce. The methods have expanded. Vibrators and other devices provide stimulation that hands alone might not achieve. The market for women's sex toys has exploded because the demand exists. Women are purchasing solutions to problems they're addressing privately. Pornography enters many women's practices. The stereotype suggests porn is male territory. The data contradicts the stereotype. Women consume visual content that supports their self-satisfaction routines. The content might differ from what men consume, more narrative, more relationship context. But consumption occurs. The risk emerges through escalation. The woman who uses pornography occasionally might develop patterns that resemble addiction. The stimulation threshold rises. More extreme content becomes necessary for equivalent response. The casual solution evolves into problematic dependence that creates its own issues. The emotional adequacy of self-satisfaction varies. For some women, it's sufficient, the physical release happens, the tension dissipates, life continues. For others, the release highlights what's missing. The orgasm happens, but the emptiness that follows emphasizes aloneness rather than relieving it. Strategy 3. Sublimation. Some women redirect sexual energy rather than satisfying it directly. The energy that would flow towards sexuality gets channeled elsewhere. Work, fitness, parenting, religion, charitable activity, creative expression. Sublimation has historical validation. Artists, mystics, and achievers throughout history have reportedly channeled sexual energy into their pursuits. The energy is powerful. When not directed towards sexuality specifically, it can fuel remarkable accomplishment in other domains. The mechanism isn't magical. Sexual energy produces general activation. That activation can be applied to whatever receives attention. The woman who's sexually frustrated and attacks her career with intensity might be converting one form of drive into another. Religious sublimation deserves specific mention. Many faith traditions prescribe celibacy outside marriage. Women following these prescriptions don't experience themselves as deprived. They experience themselves as devoted. The framework converts what might feel like lack into chosen offering. The psychology shifts through the meaning applied. Food and entertainment sometimes substitute for sexuality. The dopamine that intimacy would provide gets sought through eating, through streaming television, through other sources of chemical release. These substitutions are less conscious than work or religious sublimation. They're coping mechanisms rather than deliberate strategies. Lower sexual drive makes sublimation easier. The woman with modest baseline sexuality experiences the absence differently than the woman with intense sexuality. What would be torture for one is minor inconvenience for another. Temperament matters. The strategy that works for one woman might be insufficient for another. The integration of these strategies produces observable patterns. The woman who's been single for years has been doing something. The strategies she's deployed leave traces. Understanding the traces helps understand who she's become. The casual arrangement woman might have developed attachment from physical intimacy. The experience of separating bodies from connection might persist. The man who partners with her later might encounter someone who can be physical without being present, a skill she developed for survival that doesn't serve partnership. The self-satisfaction-focused woman might have calibrated her responses to her own touch, rather than to partner interaction. The patterns established alone don't transfer automatically to partnered sexuality. She might struggle to respond to another person when her system has been conditioned for solo experience. The sublimation woman might have buried sexuality so effectively that reactivating it proves difficult. The energy went elsewhere for so long that redirection back to sexuality doesn't happen automatically. She might enter partnership genuinely wanting connection, but physiologically unable to access what she's suppressed. These aren't judgments, they're observations. The strategies women deploy to survive produce adaptations. The adaptations don't disappear when circumstances change. The man entering relationship with such a woman is entering relationship with all the adaptations her history produced. The psychological framing varies dramatically. Some women experience their singleness as neutral fact. Neither good nor bad, just the current circumstance. This framing produces calm management without excessive suffering. Others experience singleness as failure, something wrong with them that produced unwanted outcome. This framing generates shame that compounds the original difficulty. The shame makes resolution harder because it reduces the confidence that would attract partnership. Still others construct ideological defense. Men are the problem. The culture is the problem. Partnership itself is problematic. This framing provides psychological protection. She's not failing, the system is failing her. But the protection prevents the self-examination that might produce different outcomes. The framing often shifts over time. The woman who was neutral at 30 becomes desperate at 40. The woman who blamed men at 35 accepts responsibility at 45. The psychological relationship to singleness evolves as years accumulate and hope fluctuates. What this reveals about psychology deserves attention. Extremes signal underlying issues. The woman who's had no physical contact in a decade has made accommodations that deserve examination. The woman who's maintained rotating casual partners for years has made different accommodations that also deserve examination. Neither extreme represents uncomplicated health. The complete abstainer has either unusually low drive, unusually effective sublimation, or suppression that produces other symptoms. The serial casual partner woman has either unusually effective compartmentalization, attachment avoidance that prevents intimacy, or damage she's managing through the distraction of bodies. The middle positions, some self-satisfaction, some sublimation, occasional connection when circumstances permit, probably represent healthier navigation. Not perfect, not without cost, but balanced in ways that extremes aren't. The claim that all men are bad as explanation for prolonged singleness and its management strategies deserves skepticism. The claim functions as psychological defense rather than accurate assessment. All men aren't bad. The woman making this claim is often the woman whose patterns preclude partnership with men who are available. Blaming them protects her from examining what she's contributing. For men encountering women with these histories, the woman who's been single for years brings everything her singleness produced. The strategies, the adaptations, the psychological defenses, the patterns established in absence don't disappear in presence. Curiosity serves better than judgment. How did she manage? What did she do? What does that reveal about her relationship to her body, to intimacy, to connection? The answers aren't disqualifying necessarily, but they're informative. The woman who survived through compartmentalization might compartmentalize with you too. The woman who suppressed effectively might struggle to unsuppress. The woman who developed casual partner patterns might continue those patterns despite partnership. The history predicts without determining. Awareness helps. The absence of discussion about these topics in her presentation might itself be informative. The woman who acts as though the years of singleness produced no challenge to manage might be concealing. The challenge existed. Everyone who's human faces it. Pretending otherwise suggests either dishonesty or disconnection from her own experience. The integration question matters most. How has she integrated her experience? The woman who's processed her singleness, understood what produced it, managed it consciously, learned from it, presents differently than the woman still raw from it. The processing produces wisdom. The absence of processing produces reactivity. Ask indirect questions. How did she spend those years? What did she learn about herself? How did she handle the challenges of that period? The answers reveal processing level even without explicit discussion of sexuality. The woman who can discuss that period with equanimity has achieved something. The woman who can't discuss it at all has achieved something else. The emotional health question intersects with the practical question. Her strategies might have been necessary survival mechanisms, but survival mechanisms that persist after danger passes become dysfunction. Has she updated? Has she developed capacity for partnership that her singleness strategies didn't require? The answer determines whether history stays historical or contaminates the present. The broader cultural context. Modern dating has extended the periods of singleness people experience. Marriage ages have risen. Relationship formation has become more complicated. More women spend more years managing sexuality without partnership than previous generations did. The strategies we've discussed operate at scale. Millions of women navigating the same challenge with the same limited options. The solutions that emerge aren't individual quirks. They're population-level responses to population-level conditions. The isolation compounds the difficulty. These topics aren't discussed. Each woman managing them feels uniquely burdened. The feeling of unique burden adds shame to practical difficulty. Community that would normalize the challenge and share coping strategies doesn't exist because the topic remains taboo. Technology has modified the landscape. Access to self-satisfaction devices has never been easier. Access to visual content supporting self-satisfaction has never been more unlimited. Access to casual partners through apps has created options that didn't exist a generation ago. The management strategies available now differ from what was available before. Whether the new options produce better or worse outcomes remains unclear. More tools for managing the problem exist. More ways to avoid developing capacity for partnership also exist. The woman who can manage indefinitely through self-satisfaction and casual arrangement might never develop the vulnerabilities that partnership requires. The management becomes barrier rather than bridge. The return to partnership after extended absence. The woman who hasn't been in partnership for years faces specific challenges when partnership becomes available again. The body has patterns. Patterns established alone or with casual partners don't automatically transfer. Relearning how to be sexual with someone she cares about, when caring introduces vulnerability that casual didn't, requires transition that isn't automatic. Expectations have shifted. What she remembers from previous partnership might not match what partnership now involves. The experience she's had in between, even if only solo experience, has modified her. She's not the same person who was last in relationship. The person she's becoming partnered with isn't meeting her as she was, but as she's become. Communication requirements increase. The partner can't know what she's been through unless she shares it. Sharing requires vulnerability. Vulnerability after years of self-protection feels dangerous. The temptation to conceal, to present as though the years were neutral rather than challenging, undermines the honesty partnership requires. Patience becomes necessary on both sides. Her capacity for intimacy needs rebuilding. His understanding of what she's managed needs developing. The relationship can't achieve overnight what years of absence have complicated. The process takes time that both parties must be willing to invest. The pathway forward. For the woman managing the situation, recognize that the strategies serving survival might not serve partnership. What got you through the years alone might not translate to thriving with someone. Adaptation served purpose. Continued adaptation serves different purpose. The transition requires conscious effort. The extremes warrant examination. If you've gone a decade without touch, understand what that means about the walls you've built. If you've maintained constant casual contact, understand what that means about the intimacy you've avoided. Neither extreme is condemnation. Both extremes are information about where you've landed that deserves honest assessment. The framing you've constructed deserves examination too. If all men are terrible, who benefits from that belief? If relationships are traps, who does that protect? The defenses that made survival tolerable might prevent the partnership that would make defense unnecessary. For men encountering these histories, approach with curiosity rather than judgment. The woman who's been single for years has been surviving. The survival strategies she deployed were responses to real situations. Understanding what she faced helps you understand who she's become. The strategies themselves might matter less than the integration. Has she processed? Has she learned? Has she developed the capacity for partnership that her singleness strategies didn't require? The answers determine whether her history is just history, or whether it remains active force shaping the present you're entering. Some women emerge from extended singleness with deeper self-knowledge, clearer understanding of what they need, and readiness for partnership that previous versions of themselves lacked. The difficulty produced growth. The management strategies developed capacities. The outcome is positive despite the challenging path. Others emerge damaged. The strategies that served became patterns that trap. The defenses that protected became walls that isolate. The years alone produced adaptations that prevent the partnership the years were supposed to be waiting for. Distinguishing between these outcomes matters for anyone building a relationship with such a woman. The question isn't whether she has history. Everyone has history. The question is what the history produced. Growth or damage. Integration or fragmentation. Readiness or dysfunction. The honesty required is uncomfortable. These topics remain uncomfortable because sexuality itself remains uncomfortable for many people to discuss. The discomfort doesn't eliminate the reality. The reality persists whether discussed or not. Women managing extended singleness face real challenges. Pretending otherwise doesn't help them. Providing frameworks for understanding might. The strategies we've examined aren't shameful. They're human responses to human situations. Naming them permits examining them. Examining them permits choosing them consciously rather than falling into them by default. Men seeking to understand women encounter these histories constantly. The woman who's been single for years is common. Understanding what that means, what she's faced and how she's faced it, helps assess who she's become. The assessment isn't judgment. It's information that relationship formation requires. The broader culture would benefit from honesty these topics receive too rarely. The isolation that shame produces serves no one. The strategies deployed in private might be deployed better with community support and open discussion. The taboo protects nothing worth protecting while preventing conversation that might actually help. The human situation remains constant. Sexual beings without sexual expression face challenge. The challenge admits various responses. The responses produce various outcomes. Understanding the landscape helps navigate it. This isn't about reaching conclusions regarding which strategy is correct. Different women face different situations with different temperaments, producing different optimal responses. What's optimal varies. What remains constant is that something must be done. The doing deserves the examination it too rarely receives. More content on understanding the full range of human experience in relationships, including the experiences that don't get discussed in polite company, exists. Links available. For those with perspective on this territory, whether personal experience or observation of others, share what you've seen. What strategies appeared? What outcomes followed? The experiences shared might illuminate terrain. Others are navigating without map. The human situation involves managing biology within circumstance. The circumstances vary, the biology persists. Understanding both helps everyone navigating the intersection. What she's been doing during the years alone matters, not as judgment, as information about who you're actually encountering when you encounter her.